Hey everybody, Jordan Norell here, making my daily video on circumcision. And today I would like to talk a little bit about my own experiences through the years. Starting with, I actually first heard about female genital mutilation when I was a kid, and I thought to myself, if something like that ever happened to me, if I was a woman who had my genitals mutilated, I think that's one of the worst things that could ever happen. But I think I'd ultimately be okay. I think I'd get over it and be still able to be happy with my life in other ways. And I was wrong about that, and I'll get to that in a minute. I also heard about male circumcision when I was a kid, and didn't really understand it or hear much about it, but that it was made your penis more sensitive because it removed the skin covering the head or something like that. So it was done to make it better. So then growing up, I always really, really liked sex. I thought it was the most amazing, beautiful thing in the world. I just felt it was sacred. A connection with the person that you love and care about the most on a physical, emotional, and on a spiritual level as well. On the every level you're connecting with this person. I thought, what's more amazing than that? And with your genitalia, which are designed by billions of years, with the express necessity that they must be extremely pleasurable because that's how we continue as a species. That's the most important thing that can happen for us, is we're alive if we continue to survive, is that it feels really good, and it's profoundly satisfying to have sex. And so that's how we're made. And I thought, wow, that's the luckiest being in the universe to be in this human body and to have this awesome blessing. So fast forward to when I was 18, I loved my penis. It was my favorite part of my body. I thought it was great. I hadn't had sex yet, but I really enjoyed masturbation and thought it was just great, and still didn't really know much about circumcision, and thought about it one day and thought, that's an interesting thing. Maybe I could think about that and jack off. It makes my penis more sensitive. I don't know, I masturbate to weird things, so interesting. I might look into that more, and kind of curious about it to understand it better. And so when I Googled circumcision and started trying to understand it, I was really pretty horrified by what I found, which is that some people actually see circumcision as genital mutilation. And I got really scared and started looking at, well, maybe I'm not circumcised. Why would someone do that to me? That doesn't make any sense. And I researched more, and I eventually figured out it definitely was, and that some people had been circumcised as adults and actually found that it took away almost all of the sensitivity in their penis. That the foreskin is actually the best part, and I got obsessed with it pretty quick and was researching it for a couple days, just getting more and more upset, and finally decided to talk to my mom about it. And she basically said, well, most guys, are in the United States are circumcised and they're totally happy with it and they don't have any issues, so you shouldn't worry about it. I told her I thought she should research it, and she came back the next day and basically said the same thing. I don't think you should have any issue. It's really just it's done for cosmetic reasons, but there's nothing wrong with it. So I didn't try to talk to her about it anymore for a long time, and continued reading about it every night for probably an hour every night. Often I would be masturbating because, again, I'm weird like that, and maybe it helped me cope or something. And over the course of the next year or two, I learned a lot about circumcision and became very, very upset by it and very, very angry about it. And had sex with a couple different partners, never talked about it with any of them. Didn't really think about it that much during sex. I was too preoccupied with other things, luckily, for a while, and was pretty okay with that aspect of my life. But when I would think about it at night, I would still get really upset about it and think about it pretty much every night. Then after a couple years, I finally, well, first I talked to my dad about it. My parents are divorced, but I was living with my dad at that point, and then talked to him, and he was a little bit more empathic, but still kind of told me, you should probably just try to, there's a lot of men who have, or women who have issues with their bodies, and just at this age, thinking about that there's something wrong with their bodies, and it's best to probably just try to not think about it. And told me to go see my psychologist, who also told me to not think about it. But around this time, I started getting really, really upset in a deeper way, and developing post-traumatic stress disorder, though I didn't know it was that at the time. And started to change as a human being. Who I was kind of fell apart on the inside, and I would think about circumcision more and more often. I was following a few hundred different, or at least a couple hundred, I'd say, intactivist groups on Facebook, so I'd unfollow all of them, all those pages and groups and everything, because I just couldn't, it was becoming an obsession where I would think about it all the time, and I just couldn't stop. I started to have a couple breakdowns where I would just be in the fetal position, crying harder than I've ever seen anybody cry. I saw the procedure at least a couple times by this time, around this time, and it just killed me to know that was done to me, and started having more trouble sleeping at night. Any word that started with circle, or circumstances, made me immediately start thinking about it. Seeing any child under the age of probably 13 made me think about it, especially babies crying. Anything sex related made me think about it. Any sexual innuendo or joke. Anything about men or masculinity, or females or femininity, and a lot of other, so many, I'd be triggered hundreds of times a day into a state where I was in just panic internally, and it was pretty much impossible to enjoy masturbation or sex after this point. It was still the most awesome, amazing, beautiful thing in the world, and I loved it, but also a part of me really, really hated it. It was like hell. Just indescribably bad. I don't know how to describe it. It was like my insides are just burning. Like I said, my sense of self just started to fall apart. I hated myself. I hated every iota of my being. I hated everybody in the universe. I didn't know what hatred was until I really started to face circumcision deeply, and it's like every atom of the universe was vibrating with hatred. Like it was like one of those transcendent meditation experiences you hear about, or orgasm or something like that, except the exact opposite. And it would just happen to me over and over and over, and I kept thinking that it can't get any worse, and just crying, and a lot of times I wasn't able to cry, but I just having these feelings, and it just kept getting worse and worse. I thought it can't possibly get worse, and then it would get a lot worse and worse. and and I wanted to die every day. And there wasn't a day in about a 3-year period after that point when I didn't wish I was not alive. And I was going to start at a new school after my first school, and then I dropped out of that because I was in too much pain, and took a year off. And at that point had the first girlfriend who was a little bit understanding, and although I wasn't able to talk about it much, and then I left and came to my other college, and Naropa, where I finished my bachelor's in psychology, and had a girlfriend who was really helpful in that she was really caring. It did make our relationship more difficult in some ways because I was so neurotic about it, and telling her, like, if you ever hear anything about circumcision or anything related to it, you have to like come and tell me immediately. And like if I'm ever upset, then this is what I'm upset about, and I won't be able to say it out loud. So I'll signal to you some way, and like I just need you to be there for me. And it's not okay. Like she made a joke about it early on, or said a joke that she heard to me, and it took everything in me not to like blow up at her or like get like really angry. And I just went in the bathroom and cried, and I just knew it would be a huge barrier in our relationship, and it really was, sexually and in terms of how much I was able to feel, and how it affected me in my life. But it was also really helpful having her. She had me help me talk to my parents more times and encouraged me to do a project on it for class, which I created and showed to my class, which was really great. And started to confront it more. She helped me write a letter to my mom about it. And then finally, after about 2.5-3 years of that, I knew I had to do something to change it, and so I took a class at my school called Learning from Trauma, which was about trauma and getting help for that. And it was really, really helpful. We read Peter Levine's book, Waking the Tiger, and Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score. And I used exercises from those. I used other stuff I got from the class to help me process the trauma, and really started to feel it all the way. And even went through re-experiencing that totally for a period of hours once, which was also partly cannabis-induced. I'm in Colorado, so that's legal, and it can be helpful to help your imagination and process things a little bit differently. And by the way, also, pretty much every night when I'd be trying to go to sleep, I'd keep on re-experiencing over and over being circumcised, having my penis cut into the most sensitive part of my penis, ripped to shreds, the most intense pain a human being can feel, basically, on the most sensitive part of your body at the most sensitive time in life. completely helpless, strapped down, um, often done without anesthetic or not proper anesthetic. I'm just experiencing that over and over and over every night. There's not much I can imagine worse in the world than the trauma that circumcised men experience. But yeah, finally when I started to get help, all the symptoms started to lessen and dampen a lot, and after 2 or 3 months I wouldn't have qualified for PTSD anymore after having had virtually every symptom and subsymptom at the greatest intensity possible for a number of years. I wouldn't have qualified anymore and had relatively low scores after 2 or 3 months, which was pretty amazing, and why I'm now trying to help other men with that same thing, because it's unbelievable how much better you can get from doing exercises like those. So now it's been about almost 2.5 years since I did that trauma therapy. I graduated from school. One thing I want to say is, well, all of this is going on, like all of my other aspects of life are going on too, like relationship, losing relationship, going to school, all of the hecticness that's involved in that, and stuff with family, stuff with friends or lack thereof, stuff with work, and I find this with all my clients too. There's so many other things. Some people have addictions, some people have other very difficult relationships and people they have to take care of, and there's so many different things that can be going on at the same time. And when you consider someone's circumcision trauma, you also have to consider the fact that they have a whole entire life too that can also be as difficult as anybody's life. So in the past 2 years of since the beginning, I started writing down a lot of ideas about intactivsm, which is the movement to keep babies intact and not circumcise. And so have some 50 pages of stuff on that, of ideas and things I want to do. And one of the main ones was working with men on circumcision trauma. Another is working for Foregen, which is a company who's devoted to regenerating the human foreskin so that we could basically undo the sexual and physical damage of circumcision. So my mission is to both heal the emotional and the physical side of it. And after doing some spiritual stuff, I realized that that's the leap I need to take. It's actually the most difficult thing I could be doing with my life, and it's always been extremely, extremely difficult. I almost never talked with anybody about circumcision except my significant other until a few months ago, and then I started talking about it. Last year I started talking about it with a local intactivist group, Colorado Advocates for Body Integrity and Children's Rights, and started talking about it with them and attending those and learning more about the intactivist movement and its history and the big players in it. And then I also started talking about it with people at Foregen for the podcast, as well as other members of Foregen. And then recently, in the past 3 months or so, I started talking about it as a rideshare driver with my passengers. If they asked what I do, or if I do this full time, I'd say, well, I'm also a podcast host, and often that sparks some interesting conversations. Or I work at a nonprofit, and often people get curious about, what's the nonprofit? And I can tell them, well, it's about not cutting your children's genitals. It's not exactly how I say it. I try to come at it very gradually to feel out where people are. And it's been really incredible to see how much I've grown making myself do that, and this thing that is so difficult for me. It brings up a lot of pain, but I'm really grateful for being able to face this, actually, because what I've learned and what I believe is that through what some people call post-traumatic growth, learning from that shadow side of yourself and embracing that and going into your own darkness can actually bring out the most amazing gifts that you never may have even known were possible. And that's part of why I think I allowed myself to be actually traumatized so deeply, and maybe I shouldn't be. I don't know if I really had a choice, honestly. I don't think anybody could choose that if they knew what they're actually getting into. Like I said earlier, it's a whole nother level of, it ripped me apart. It ripped to shreds everything that I was, and almost literally killed me. But ultimately, as I'm rebuilding myself and becoming stronger than I ever was before by a lot, I used to have a lot of social anxiety, and I've overcome a lot of that, and I'm developing a lot of leadership skills and have a lot deeper empathy, a lot more internal resources than I had before. And a lot of that is thanks to being forced to have that, and either developing those things and going that route, or not healing and living a half life, which isn't any life at all, really. So yeah, this year I'm worked with Eric Klopper and his play, and am hoping to interview Brendan Murata sometime soon for the Foregen podcast. And couldn't be happier with where I'm at now with my psychological healing. I'm continuing to do a lot of different exercises and a lot of meditation every day that helps me really engage any lingering trauma and any stuff that keeps coming up as I'm engaging with this issue every day. There's a lot of really traumatic energy just around the topic with everybody I talk to. And again, I consider that a positive in terms of meaning that there's a lot of room for healing and a lot of room for growth. And continue to develop my trauma work, and hoping that soon I'll be able to create a program that will be available online for men, as well as help connect men to a therapist. And I'm really excited for where we're going with this issue, because I think very soon we're going to come to a point where it's not acceptable to cut the genitals of any child, and that's going to be a fundamental shift in the way that we think about an aspect of human rights. And hopefully will either be rewritten in the Constitution, or at the very least have some kind of protection for all children around it. And then have a solution, have a physical solution. We need to fund a physical solution of Foregen, of tissue regeneration, whoever does that. Foregen is well positioned to. They already have the company and a plan and things in place so that it can happen. But basically we need someone to regenerate the foreskin so that men can have their whole bodies that they were born with. It's atrocious what we're missing. The foreskin really is the best part of the penis, and it really is equivalent to female genital mutilation. I've finally come to admit to myself, the foreskin is a pretty close equivalent of the clitoris in a lot of ways. in terms of the pleasure it provides. And it took me a lot of years to admit that to myself, and what a profound loss it is. But it's undeniable if you really look at it. And so, yeah, come to a physical solution, and as well as an emotional one, is what I'm really passionate about right now. And I'm really excited because I'm going to throw everything I have into this in the next 2 or 3 years, and I think that will be enough to achieve all of those things, really. I've studied psychology and personal growth and social change for much of my life, and I feel like I'm really well positioned to help out with this issue. And like, there's already a lot of people doing a lot of amazing work, and I really feel like we're about to hit that tipping point where things change. And then from there, I'm really excited to move on with the rest of my life, because I have a lot of stuff I want to do with my life, and I want to get back to square one, back to having my whole body where I should have started with from the beginning. So I'm really excited to finally be there. One other thing I didn't mention, I have been restoring my foreskin for the past 4.5 years, which is awesome. It's a very slow process. I finally started doing manual restoration, which I think is a lot faster than the other several methods I tried. And I would highly recommend that. It's also kind of therapeutic in its own way. And when Foregen comes along, we can just remove the restored foreskin and put a new one back on. My foreskin grows very slowly, so it'll be another, 10 to 20 years before I'd actually have one, and a restored foreskin isn't truly a real foreskin. So we do need Foregen to come through, and it will come through. There's no question about it. The technology's there. It's really not that difficult. We just need the funding for it, and that's really not that difficult either. It's a few $1 million at most. $100 million? I don't think it's ever going to be more than that. And in the grand scheme of things, that's nothing. That's very little compared to the scale of the problem. There's over 100 million circumcised men. If each of them contributed $1, that'd be enough to fund it. It's really just an issue of getting the word out, of making people understand it, and also getting people to understand that there is both a physical and psychological solution. We just need to speak up about this. That's why I'm here today, to tell you my story. I'd love to hear your story. I think if every man who was traumatized by this put their story up like this and said, this is my experience, this is what I'm going through, and this is what I need to feel whole again and to be okay. So please, everybody in society, just listen, just hear this. But the first step will be speaking up. And so hope you guys benefited from this. Hope that you will you'll consider doing the same thing yourself. And if you're someone who is not circumcised or don't really understand this, then I encourage you to keep listening. Keep hearing men out, because this is something that's really, really hard to talk about and really important to understand. And it will make it so much a better world if we can hear each other's pain, and have love for that, and have understanding and compassion. That's what's going to make a difference, is those people listening, speaking out in both that and listening. So if you're interested in therapy, if you're interested in talking with me, if you're interested in anything else, You can always email me at jordanarel@hotmail.com, jordanarel@hotmail.com. I'd love to talk to you. First consultations for therapy are always free, and it's a huge help for me so I can keep on doing this work and develop more materials for men. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.